Hey guys, it is another day in sunny or overcast San Sebastian, and this is Oni Onyabor, Peter Clampton, talking to you about how to raise myself in the Oni Onyabor Raising Project. So today I'm going to be talking about patience and the law of patience, which is essentially, I think it's one of the most, it was the characteristic actually that I was working the most on this year. And I think understanding what patience is one of the most critical lessons I've had in my life, especially when you just realize we live in a reality where time is one of the central constructs of our lessons. So if you want to think, what am I supposed to learn or how am I supposed to do this, think about how time plays into the equation. And oftentimes you're going to get answers far faster than you ever knew. And so today we're just, we're going to talk about the law of patience. So let me read it off first. And it's pretty simple. And it said the law of patience is that all things must have their time and their season whereby they work their action to proper fruition. And what that means is that there's a time and season for all things, and things need their time in order for the result or the energy to take place, for this thing to manifest. And this law, I think, is one of the, it's one, if you can get your head and your heart around, I think probably gives the most peace of anything I've ever seen or I've experienced, though I'm certainly not perfect at it. This year, I focused on being patient with myself and really trying to master this principle, because oftentimes I do things in a rush, right? I've always felt, not always, but there was a time where I always felt I was behind on everything and like I couldn't get anything that I wanted. And I felt like I had to rush, especially as a writer. Oftentimes, you might say, oh, I want to publish this many books in this amount of time, or, I will be satisfied with my life when I have this thing, right? The thing is, though, especially as you go through and you advance through life and do the work to get these things, you realize that ultimately things will come. It's just a matter of patience, and there's no circumventing it. So, for instance, if you put a seed in the ground and you water that seed every day and you're diligent, that seed will grow, eventually become a tree, but there's no way around that. In order for that seed to grow into a 10-foot tree or a 20-foot tree or a 30-foot tree, it has to go through every single bit of growth from being a small seed up to 10 feet. It cannot skip any steps. Now, you might not see it. You might go to sleep and the tree or the little bud is 7 inches, and you might wake up and it'll be 9 inches. But you got to recognize that's 2-inch margin. It went through every single excruciating bit of growth to get there. It was 7.1 inches, 7.2 inches, 7.3, all the way up to that 9 before it arrived there. And it's going to do that with everything, and everything functions like that. In order to get to a higher level, we might move quickly through some stages, but we cannot skip stages. It is impossible. You cannot do it. Anybody who is 5'10", for instance, had to be 5'9", and they had to be 5'8" at one point. They had to be 5'7", right? Now, they might never have been measured at that. They might never have been cognizant or aware of the fact they were that height. But in order to have arrived at 5'10", you have to have been every single height in between. Obviously, from the point of conception, you're growing in the womb or whatever. But it's just recognizing growth. It always moves in this outward expansion. And if you understand that in our career, with our knowledge, with everything and everything we do, there is no shortcuts. There is no way to quickly circumvent things outside of moving through those steps. So we can do those steps as quickly as possible, but recognizing that some steps are simply a matter of time. So when it comes, for instance, to being older, this is going to sound really silly, but I think I had this lesson when I was an au pair before I was taking care of these 3 kids, and I would kind of reenact my old childhood ways of being pressured, of always having to grow up early, and I would put that on them a little bit. And it wasn't until I realized that these kids, no matter what I do, no matter what I say, no matter what happens, they could be the very best version of themselves every single day for this 1 year. But during that 1 year, they will never be older than what they were. So there was this boy, he was 6 years old, and I noticed until he is 7 years old, he will never be more than 7 years old. There is nothing I can do about that. He will only ever be 7 years old, because the matter of time it takes to be 7 years old. And I can push him to be like a 10-year-old. I can push him to be like a 12-year-old. I can push him to be like what I think should be this perfect version of him or whatever. But at the end of the day, because it is based in time, he is only ever going to be 7. And there's nothing I can do about that. And when I realized that, I realized, wow, I need to just let him grow and be, and not try to manage him so much and try to do all these things. And I see so oftentimes just in our lives, we try to be more than what we are because we think what we are is flawed or incomplete, but it's recognizing that sapling is going to become a tree one day. And it's only through every single excruciating inch and step it becomes that tree. And if we keep trying to move through these stages faster or do them before they're complete, we only end up shortcutting the process. And then we actually don't ever grow through it. We just stall the growth. We just keep it from growing because we're being impatient. We're trying to force things. And so part of this law of patience is recognizing that energy is always going to be rewarded to those who allow things to be and to come to fruition in their proper time and season. A lot of this, I think, we see in romantic relationships. We see that relationships, there's an old Amish saying, they say, the fence which is put up quickly falls just as quickly. And the fence which takes a long time to build lasts just as long, lasts even longer. And so it means that taking time is good. Don't be in a rush. And I think it's important to do things quickly. I think it's important to do things efficiently. But it's more important just to make sure that every single step you're moving through, you do it well. And you don't do it sloppily or in a rush. I definitely at times struggle with this because there are some times when I will use some arbitrary measurement, either my age or how much money I think I should be making, or just these idea of what my accomplishments should be, and I force things. I try to make myself be more than what I am, rather than recognizing simply things are going to take the time that they need to take, and that I can't rush. I can't circumvent those things. And when I started to learn to do that, I got better. I think especially with my writing. As I finished, it really came onto, as I finished more books, I became more patient. I actually wanted to talk about that. So for instance, my third book ever that I wrote and that I started was The Girl and the Beast Volume 3, right? And if you looked at my post from yesterday, I'm happy to announce that it's finally coming out. But I started that book over 3-4 years ago. And it was the 7th book that I finished. So I started it as number 3, but there was all these other books that I'd finished before then. And I say finished in the sense that it needed a lot of work done, and because I didn't necessarily understand my process. But I could only have ever come to my understanding of that process as I completed other works and I continued. And oftentimes we need to recognize that this process of life is done in such a way that if we will embrace it, it can only empower us and help us. And working to be at peace with that and to live comfortably in that moment, that's what's going to give a lot of direction and power. I think especially to people who are seeking to be creative, whether it be through your art or, for the writers, I think especially just doing that story arc or writing those characters or doing the book page by page and not making this big grand assignment that you can't really control or have an understanding of. Sometimes you just have to allow things to be in the season that they're in. And oftentimes, if you haven't experienced enough of the working process to understand what season you're in, that's where you've just got to stumble through the year and you've got to move through the dark. But as you complete things and you get more comfortable with the process, you start knowing, okay, this is where I'm at in the season. Just like a full year. During this year, there are 4 seasons of life, and oftentimes people will speak about balance in life, but I've kind of thrown balance to the wind. I don't even know if... I think things will balance so long as we live and work in concert with the things around us. And sometimes balance doesn't necessarily mean you stay in balance. It means that you throw yourself in balance with the things around you. Meaning, if there's a time in your life where there's so much going on and you need to slow down, sometimes maintaining balance is slowing down. But if, say, there's a time when things are very stable and you need to grow and you need to build, then that's the thing you need to do. Just balance comes with the season of life you're in. And I think being patient for those seasons to come and ebb and flow is part of what it means to be balanced and at peace. It's being present. And that's oftentimes really difficult, because oftentimes, I think especially in a capitalist structure, we're always told to, 9 to 5, produce so many widgets and do this in, day out. But if you do that, you lose your soul, you lose what you're all about, you lose what you're trying to do. And then eventually, you become this disheartened, smaller version of yourself. And that's no good for anybody. And so the biggest thing when learning patience is just understanding that things take their time. So for me personally, I started working on The Girl and the Beast 6 years ago. I wrote it and published it. It was ages ago that I did that. It was a long time ago. And it's only now that I'm releasing volume 3. And for the longest time, I was really beating myself up for it. I was kind of disappointed. Why didn't I release this book? It was supposed to be more. I should have had this series done. Yada, yada, yada. Then it was recognizing that in between that time, though, there was a lot of things that I needed to figure out. Now, if you go into the other videos, I needed to make sure that I was in a place that when my writing career was able to start and when I was doing it, I could follow through and produce at the level I wanted to consistently. And in order to do that, I had to take care of so many other things in my life. And that took time. And it was just recognizing that I wanted this one particular season of my life to begin, but that wasn't going to happen until another season ended. And like they say, you can only snowboard in winter. So what that means is not every day and every part of your life is going to be sunny and filled with rainbows and honey and all this beautiful stuff. You're going to have winter, you're going to have fall with your summer and your spring. But if we become so in love with winter that we forget the importance of... If we become so in love with spring that we forget the importance of winter, we stop having a spring. We recognize the snow that falls in winter. It's part of the Earth's rejuvenative process. And just like we as human beings, we have our process. Some people will say, and I did this for a while, where I wanted to get more done, so I stopped sleeping. And because I stopped sleeping, I was up all the time. But when I was up, I was tired. And I was giving myself more time, but I was making less use of that time because I was trying to force the season. I was trying to force what stage of life I was in because I felt, I should need less sleep. And so I was going with less sleep, but then my body, because my body still needed sleep, it wasn't operating and I wasn't doing well. And part of obeying the law of patience is recognizing you have certain cycles and things, and the only reason you're rushing is because you're being impatient. You're not trusting that the energy or the work you're putting in is going to come. And that's problematic when you're not doing the things as you need to and trusting that process. And so for me, a lot of it that I see in this journey is just learning to trust no matter what stage you are in life, if you lean more fully into that. So if you're in a stage right now where things are kind of more chill and you need to rest and maybe you're sad or maybe you are needing more time to reflect, lean into that. Don't try and fight it. You can only snowboard in winter. So it's recognizing that sometimes maybe you prefer to skateboard. Maybe you prefer to play outdoor basketball. and play street ball, but you can't do it while it's snowing. Or maybe you could, in some places like Chicago, but it's a little tougher. But that's why having a diverse palette, being able to do a lot of different things, this is where it really comes in. And recognizing that when it's snowing, get your snowboard. When, it's summer, get your skateboard, go surfing. There's just different things you can do based off the time and place you're in your life. So if you're, say, a student and it's time to hit the books and study, but there might be another time in your life where you're kind of lost and you don't know what to do. It's okay to be lost. It's okay not to know what to do. And being patient and recognizing, okay, if I put the work in, if I'm thinking, what do I want to do with my life? And I'm legitimately investigating and trying to understand, you will get the answer. It has to happen. That's inevitable. And so as you learn to trust that process, things will come and they'll build as they should. And this is fundamentally the law of patience, is that things come in the time and season they're allotted, and we just have to do the work. Because to be patient doesn't mean just to sit back and wait, but to be patient means to keep doing the things we know we need to do so that the things we want or the things that ought to come can come. Because just because winter comes doesn't mean we're going to go out and snowboard. We have to grab the board and we have to go out into the slopes and do that. And just because it's summer doesn't mean we're going to go outside and get that nice suntan. We still got to go out, grab the paddle, and roll up to the beach. So there's still things you need to do. So it's just recognizing what season of life you're in and doing what it needs to be done. So if you're a writer and you're not writing right now, you need to ask yourself why. And if it's because you're worrying about things or there are other things that are holding you back in other places of your life, then you need to start taking care of those things. But if you have that time and it's open and you're not able to, and there's these blocks, then you need to ask yourself, why am I not riding the snow? And that's where maybe this law of impatience or other blocks are holding us up. And that's where, if you guys need help, this is what I do. I do that for my business. I coach and stuff like that. God, I'm not doing well at this. I'm too tired. I didn't get much sleep last night. But that's where guys like me come in. So if you find yourself in a place where you really need help breaking through those blocks and you're trying to get a project done, hit me up with a message at my email and click on the link in my Instagram and DM me. Let's talk and see what we can do. But outside of that, just live whatever season of life you're in and work from there. Because ultimately, life is working for you. You just have to go with the currents and not fight against it. Because at the end of the day, life's made for us. So, be patient and remember that all things must have their time and their season to which their actions work to bring their proper fruition. So keep working, keep acting, and live the dream. Take care, stay happy, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed.